Hello, everyone. Today's going to be interesting because first off, we have a new guest host joining us today. I'd like to welcome a nice acquaintance of mine, Toby.
Yeah, yeah. I'm Toby, and I enjoy a lot of VFX and computer generated programs, like movies stuff, which is cool. The reason why I like it is because I do programming, and the program I want to do is to do with graphics, and I like always seeing how that can be used in like a entertainment sort of area, such as movies and TV and that sort of stuff. And I always thought about how you can see the differences between like special effects and visual effects. So yeah, that's where I go from there.
Hmm, nice introduction. And yeah, I think today's going to be interesting because we're talking about something that I am 100% not really well versed in. Because I've mostly ever just been for the story guy, the guy who's there for the entertainment and the narratives as opposed to the behind the scenes wizard wonders. But can't deny, I'm curious to get your take on it, and I'll just state the facts here for everyone. We're neither of us are experts, if you
No,
can
not at
tell
all, not
already.
at all. It's just passion. It's all just passion. Well, that's sort of where I come from with this. Although I
It's
do
all
know
about
about it, but I'm just passionate.
yeah, it's all about just your own drive and your interest in the subject matter, and depending on how much you know. And hey, a month from now, after this episode goes up, we'll probably
Mm.
know a lot more than we even do now. But
Yeah, yeah.
can't deny in the moment, it's just going to be an interesting conversation to have, and one that I hope you will all enjoy as well. So, kicking off then, would you like to give us a basic rundown of special effects and and the alternative?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Already
can, I
forgetting the
can,
name.
I can give it a brief, but hopefully a good explanation. So you have special effects, where it's like you use like it's real world. Like you don't use any computers. It's nothing like just like it's man-made objects to say like it's arts and crafts in a sense where you make your own sets using like materials that you can buy, and it just looks real. Or you can like for example, blood effects is like actually using like machinery to create an effect like that. And then on the other hand, you have visual effects, which is just using purely computers and generated using math, just pure math and graphs and stuff like that. In you got softwares. There's a few softwares that exist. There's one called Houdini. You got Blender. Those are all like 3D software. They all have like their niche sort of applications to what you could do. So like Blender would be used for, I don't know, creating a model. So say if you want a model of a plane, you create that in there, and then for Houdini that would create like effects such as smoke or like fire or whatever. And that's what most modern films use these days because it is cheaper in a sense, but it can become expensive because you got like buy like you know have like manpower to understand these softwares. Although special effects is the same thing, you also got to have the manpower to understand these software and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that is the varying differences between special effects and VFX from what I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is interesting. Just even just from that description, really, just or that rundown of it, that really puts into perspective how far we've come with entertainment when it
With
comes to film and TV.
yeah.
Because back when this was all kicking off during the early days of cinema, it was all
Mm,
due to that's what they could do at the time.
yeah.
And then you jump forward to the '90s, and we get stuff like Jurassic Park, and we get the Terminator, and then you jump forward even forward to there, and you've got all these other great films that take a good balance of what they can do, but what they can not do, and they are able to put stuff out like Iron Man,
Yeah. Even Avatar as well.
yeah, and Avatar, and but then we get to today, and it's become what's the word to describe it? It's not become a battleground, but it's become a common occurrence now that a lot of entertainment, as you said, relies on the the
That
special,
tech.
the technical, the visual effects side of
Yeah.
it now. I mean, what's your thought on that? Do you feel like that is an okay thing that can benefit, or would you say that's a double-edged sword?
Definitely, there's benefits to both. Visual effects is definitely like, don't get me wrong, it's insane. Like you can do things that like you got a space sort of environment. You can't really film in space, can you? So like visual effects does help with that. But when you use visual effects where you could create a real world environment using special effects, then it's just like, why not just use the special effect? It looks more real. Like, because with visual effects, it's like you're gonna have inconsistencies with the outcome because it's just calculate doing some calculations would cost a lot of money, and because what you need when you render visual effects, you need loads of GPUs, which are or graphics processing units, which take a bunch of numbers and process it. And the higher the quality of the visual effect, the more GPUs you'll need to process this. That's where the money of expense also comes in. So I don't think there's no downfall to it, but it just doesn't look. Well, there is. It does sometimes it just doesn't look realistic. It's just like you have very janky outcomes. Especially, to be fair, where there's probably the most outcome for janky like VFX would probably be TV, because depending on what TV show they are, because they're gonna have a less of a budget and less time frame because they got to produce these TV shows. Well, it depends what the TV. If it's like blockbuster ones, well, I say blockbuster, but like big ones, like I don't know, for example, I say Game of Thrones or something like that. Of course, they're gonna have that money to have good looking VFX. But when it comes to like smaller scale TV shows, like maybe like some Netflix one that's kind of new, they're not gonna have that money or time to have better VFX. It'd probably be better just to try and stick with a real world look, like such as special effects.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back to a lot of the CW shows where at some points they could get away with it, but then you get episodes like there's an alien invasion and they've got like a trillion aliens or something on screen, and it's just you can tell they're not. It looks like they're not even finished rendering, or
yeah,
you can just see that there's clearly been a lot of effort put into that design, but you can see he's not standing there.
yeah. No, literally, it's because what they do with that is they use this thing called crowd sims, and those are basically just repeated or instanced of the same model, and they just probably variate them in different like locations to make it look kind of like there's more than there is, but it's just the same model over and over again. And that's why, and they're probably low res, because just the lower res it is, the quicker you can, or the cheaper it will be, because as again back to the GPU stuff, you need less of that power to render that like that scene, which is pretty cool. But I know what you mean about CW, like the Arrow and stuff like that. Though they're God, their stuff is a bit tragic, but it's always a good watch. It's like that guilty pleasure. That's it. That's literally what like watching those TV shows are like.
Yeah, provided you turn your brain off and don't take it seriously, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, talking about the alternative, talking about what is it, special effects? Sorry, I mean, again, we mentioned that's been like that was like the defining thing that we focused on with entertainment for years before special effects came along. Do
Mm.
you Are there any types of visual effects that you prefer over the basic, CG stuff? Because
Um,
oh,
I think
sorry. Well, I was meant when I got them. I think I got them.
especially, yeah, I get, yeah. You meant special effects. It's fine. So basically, I think when it comes to blood, that so like blood and gore, sometimes that I feel like that is better in a special effect environment, even though it can look corny to an extent with special effects. So for example, like Quentin Tarantino films, you have like Kill Bill and all them sort of films, like there is a lot of blood in those films, but I feel like it might be a weird comparison to go to, but like recently I watched John Wick 4, and I think there is blood in that movie where it's all CG generated 100%, but it just doesn't look that good. It just looks like mist, a weird mist that doesn't look realistic. But then again, they also have to think, well, like studios, they probably also have to think about rating and like, well, not rating, but like certifications for age ratings and stuff like that, which is maybe why they just use like a tiny mist of blood or something like that when someone gets shot.
Yeah,
Which
and
is where I'm like, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to add, also, I mean, I'm imagining the cost alone for certain locations must be difficult, especially if they're not studio bound. Because I don't know if
Mm,
this has any effect on it whatsoever compared to what you were just describing, but I mean, it's no brainer that a lot of in regards to filming locations and like on site stuff, they have to like the studios have to like give money to like allow them like a period of time to shoot a film or a scene there,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
sometimes depending on what they do, that could damage the area or notably like impede the area. And
Definitely.
talking about that, I know I'm not, in reference to just blood, I'm not saying that's like, oh, they just get a bit of blood there and it's stuck there forever. I think that would be a problem, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I'm just referencing.
definitely.
I guess I'm basing this little segment off the fact that I remember right back when Game of Thrones was filming its early season, and they filmed like one of Daenerys' storylines. They filmed it at a very like rare area, very beautiful area, but they ended up damaging the site because of I think
Is that
one
the
of the
is that the
sites.
one based in Croatia? I know there's a set that where Game of Thrones is filmed in Croatia. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, bear in mind, but I know there is a set in Croatia, somewhere like near Montenegro somewhere.
I do know that it was a location that was filmed during like the first pilot episode where Daenerys gets
Mm.
married or something, but they basically damaged that site, and
Oh wow.
they then like the company the government of that area basically said we forbid anyone from filming here from now on. So I think that's
Yeah.
forever off limits now because of
Which is the
that
downfall of
incident.
special effects right there. Like you can damage the set by trying to do something that is just so like which CG could just solve that problem. There's this problem like it's like problem solving, isn't it? It's like that solves that problem there. If you want
Exactly.
a destructive environment where things are gonna break and stuff like that, CG is good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
For that.
that's what I was getting to because then because it's less because governments and such they're hiring up prices and also they don't want to take risks with important landmarks or locations, or especially if that place is like notable or brings in income to their economy or whatever. I don't know half these
Mm.
words, but the fact is that if it's a notable place that works for the story, great. But if it's going to be like
Destructive to the
costing them
environment.
trillions just to get this one shot or this one scene,
It's not worth
then
it.
the studio, of course, is likely going to go to the second best option that's going to be less costly, which is the visual effects.
And preserving the environment that's around you as well, like that's another thing that CG helps with. It preserves it. Although they do have to put green screens, probably or blue screens or green screen, whatever they use. Those two, they have to use them. But yeah, it's definitely better for that to preserve the environment, especially in that case of that Game of Thrones set you were talking about. Like, it's sad because that's probably like a historic. I'm sure it was probably some sort of historical site as well, right?
Yeah, I think it was mostly because it was such a unique structure that was made by the environment. It wasn't man-made,
Oh,
so the fact
really?
that it was damaged at all was like shit. we,
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
well, yeah, we can't let that happen again. Especially if it's going to be like if it becomes a recurring problem. Because again, once that's gone, it's gone.
It's gone forever. Yeah, no coming back. Apart from probably a million years of however long it's been taken to form that structure.
Hmm. And adding to that, do you? What, same question really. Do you? What is there? One for the special effects side of things, like on stuff done on site, like animatronics or puppets, miniatures,
Ooh,
and
yeah,
explosions and
yeah.
stuff.
That stuff is
Is
really
there a
cool.
specific one that you appreciate more?
Um, I do. So I mean, it's not. Yeah, actually, the really cool ones is like back in the 70s. Obviously, Star Wars was a thing, right? They didn't really have computers that we have today, so they used miniatures, didn't they? So for like the starships and stuff like that, they're all, oh, the Death Star as well. They're all like models, like created models,
Hmm.
and I think like don't get me wrong, with CG you can appreciate the work that's gone into it, But in CG, I feel like creating a Death Star, like yeah, it'll take a lot of time, but I feel like with a model, it's a lot of thought because like you got it's like hand. I don't know what it is. Maybe because I can't do it myself. That might be why I appreciate the special effects part more because you can just appreciate someone that's got taken out their time, well, being paid for it, obviously, to create a starship and or a Death Star, and like that's really cool, like that stuff. And even so, it's not really because this film is not really at all got any real people in the film, like no humans or whatever. It's just a claymation, like the Night Before Christmas, that sort of stuff. Like all of that is that you just I'm assuming it's just like stop motion sort of stuff, which is
Hmm.
impressive in itself. Like that, you know, you can do something like that, and it's a CG. I mean, I'm sure there must be CG in Nightmare for Christmas, no doubt. But I think a lot of it is stop motion, and having it handcrafted is just cool. And it also leads to like random off topic. But do you remember those Lego stop motion videos that were big like years ago? Like people just make that, or they're still probably still big, but like how people used to make like Lego film, like little shorts on YouTube for Lego out of
Oh
like Lego film.
yeah.
That stuff.
Funny enough, you say that. I actually remember what it was. I think it was on my old iPhone or something. I don't know if I can't even remember if it was that. But I remember roughly around 2010, I was watching. I went for a binge of watching Lego Jaws, where it was someone basically
Yeah,
took the scenes from Jaws and recreated them using Lego. And I just remember because I couldn't somehow just couldn't watch the movie for whatever
mm.
reason. Maybe we didn't own it, but at the
Yeah, yeah,
time. But I just remember watching those clips, and I thought I was so impressed. And I'm sure if I watched it again, I'd be like, yeah, you can see you can see where yeah, it's okay or it's not okay or whatever. But you can't deny it's impressive that that people
yeah.
put such
Because these
hours
people,
into sometimes such small or short projects.
yeah, definitely. It's like because those people literally what they do is they just take pictures like every frame. It's like how like they're literally not even filming. It's just a picture like every frame, and then you got to compile all those pictures and to just like put them into one sequence so it looks like it's actually moving, and it's just insane. Like that stuff is cool. Although I don't know if it really falls into the bracket of special effects, but it's still cool.
Yeah. What do you So I guess putting that subject a bit to rest.
Mm.
So would you say so would you argue there's no defining answer of which one is better than the other? It really just depends on
It's
circumstance. Would you say?
circumstances, yeah, definitely. I'd like to say special effects is better, but there are obviously yeah, it's what you need at the time. It's the tools. It's always like the tools you have. Like if you can't afford to make a set and you're like literally just starting off as like a movie producer or whatever, obviously you're gonna go for that 3D modeling part, depending on what your film's about, because 3D like or not 3D model CG part of it, because it just allows you to create bigger like things that it just I think it's easier with special. I mean, depends what you're filming again. Like it depends what film you're filming, really, isn't it? But there is. I don't think there's any defining. There's better. It's just cool to always look at the pros and cons of where like what looks better, what doesn't look better. It's just like what looks natural. Like I prefer a natural looking film, which is like for another example. I think Christopher Nolan. I think a lot of his films apart from Interstellar and probably Inception, let's be real. I think a lot of his films try to avoid visual effects. I think, and Batman, but there's a lot of films where he like tries. Like I think it was in Tenet. There's a scene where it's literally just Have you seen the scene? Have you seen Tenet?
Yeah. Are you referring to the plane crash?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, and even when
Yeah.
and even in Batman, what was it? The Dark Knight Rises one with Bane in. There's the one where the scene with the plane and free hanging from the sky, or like, well, not free hang, but like, there's like that is using special effects. And don't get me wrong, there is a merge between special effects and VFX there, but it's always cool to see like, wow, that's impressive. You're literally getting a plane and you're getting it to like dangle, or like you're crashing a plane into a building or something, like using a real set. Like,
Yeah.
it's impressive.
Yeah. It's impressive also because of just the effort that goes into it. Because
Yeah.
referencing the Dark Knight, I mean, I was thinking of the scene in the second movie where the Batman he's like chasing the Joker and they literally just flip a truck over,
Yeah.
and you see that in the film. You see like that's not CG. That's not clearly
No.
done on a computer. That was done on site, and you see the impact and how that just it makes you feel immersed in that story
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
scene. And going back to what you said about Dark Knight Rises, even just something you might not think would be CG. That scene when the police force basically band together to confront Bane's army, and you get genuine actors on site
Yeah.
charging at the bad guys. That's that.
That.
It might not be as impressive as like a big army, but that alone that they got like over 100 extras to dress up in character and charge at the screen,
It,
just it sells the scene and the impact a lot more.
it
Whereas in
does.
comparison, if that film had been made today or like 2 years ago, or
It'd
even
be
5 years ago,
bouncing.
they would have like just like CG'd all of that.
Yeah, yeah, no, literally, it's just insane. It's just like you feel, as you say, you feel the impact. Like, it just feels like when it feels more natural, you're just like, I can get with that. But when it's like CG and it just looks, I don't know. What's a really bad example of like crowd sim? Well, I mean, I guess literally the alien invasion
Well,
you're
I'd
talking about.
yeah, I'd say I mean anything from recent Marvel because
Oh
they've really been
yeah.
suffering.
Well, apparently, according to that, the I think the Black Panther scene, that they didn't have enough time to actually, so there was something I think something wrong with it. There's like they had like a little time frame to create this final battle at the end, and because like that's why it didn't look as good because they just didn't have enough time to create this real looking battle. So they just had to get something out because it was like the deadline for the film was coming soon, and then that's where it went from there. That's apparently
Yeah,
from what I've heard.
yeah. Apparently, all of Marvel has been suffering these last few years, well, for a long period now. Not just because of their poor choices and their agendas and
I think
such,
just trying to
but
push
also
out so
apparently
much
there was
content.
a I think it was last year. There was an incident about not incident. There was basically like a big uproar from the VFX department because apparently Marvel were not they were pushing around deadlines and making them like lose time and changing things at the last minute, and that led to a whole other can of worms regarding a producer or something.
Yeah, it's
And in short, it shows in the products because at the end of the day, Marvel just like again post Endgame, it's just been suffering story wise and narrative wise, and also behind the scenes wise, because people can see what's happening on the screen.
yeah.
And people might say, "Oh, it's because they're going more crazy with the stories. They're going to space more. They're going to these dark different worlds." But the thing is,
I don't think that's
they've
the
somewhat
issue
done
though.
that a bit before, and
Yeah,
that's not the issue. Yeah, the issue is that they've been, as you said, they're rushing stuff out, and they're not giving the team that they're meant to work for
how many films have
enough
come
time to
out?
finalize these products.
How many films have come out since Spider-Man, the No Way Home one? That I'm sure, like since that's come out, there's been so many Marvel films, but I don't think has any of them even popped off. Like because I don't think like Spider-Man, I feel like was the last big Marvel thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Marvel.
And
Again,
nothing.
the last good film that I actually went to see and enjoyed 3 times was Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Hmm.
Other than that, the only other one that I was somewhat entertained by, but even still found flaws with it, was Shang-Chi.
That
But
was
every other
actually really
film,
good. That was very like I did like that weirdly. That was actually a
mm,
really decent film. I mean, the CG in that was insane. They had like a lot of like I feel like where CG go back to the CG topic as well. The pros of that is you can create intricate thing of like intricate creatures that do not exist in the real world, and it can still look good. Like not real, obviously, because it's not a real creature, but they still look like you can do that. Well, you could maybe do it with special effects. You have like, for example, you have like what was it that dark crystal? Have you had a dark crystal?
I have, yeah,
You have that, which is just basically like they're all like not real creatures basically, but they're all made out of puppets. Like puppets is a really puppeteering. That's really cool stuff. Like you got someone behind there just controlling it all as again animatronics or something like that, and that's impressive in
yeah.
itself.
Just think of Yoda from Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And until they made him CG in Phantom Menace? Question? No, maybe after, just after.
Yeah, CG in all of the prequel films. To be fair, he was a puppet in Phantom Menace, but he was complete CG for the last two films, I
Yeah, I
believe.
think it was the last two. I kind of, that's why I was like Phantom Menace question mark because I'm not too sure. Phantom Menace was a good, well, it was not considered good, but looking back, I know I'm going completely off topic from VFX, but it's kind of there. Star Wars is quite. To be fair, let me on this topic of Star Wars actually. Star Wars is probably the reason why we have VFX that we have today. I think because I think if I remember correctly, George Lucas created a company, or someone within the Star Wars, someone in that Star Wars area created a company called ILM. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I vaguely do, yeah.
And they're basically just before it was a thing. They were the pioneers of visual effects and stuff like that for films, and they had a lot of tech that I think I watched a video recently to be fair about it. They had like something oh yeah, this was it. It was about Super Mario. I was on a video about Corridor Digital actually. And they created this like machine that could produce visual effects that no other company could do. It was like this whole different computer thing. And obviously Super Mario, not the new Super Mario, like the 19 whatever the fuck Super Mario that came out, the one that not many people know about. I feel they created their well, not Super Mario, but I think it was what's that camera company? It's not Kodak. It might have been Kodak or something like Kodak. They created like a similar CG create machine that ILM did. And and honestly, like if it was to do with competition, because that's the driving force of all business, isn't it? It's competition.
Yeah.
And if Star Wars didn't create that tech, we wouldn't have widely accessible CG that we have today. Obviously, they kept it on behind closed doors, which is not good. But the competition that they had wanted them to have better CG. But yeah, no, Star Wars is just the stuff they have and where they've gone is just really good. Just created really good CG. Even today,
Definitely.
like if you look at that, what was that TV show that came out, Andor? That's a lot of CG, I guess. It has a lot of, actually has a lot of sets in it, special effects. I feel apart from lasers and stuff, but there's a lot of special effects I'd say in that, and that looks incredible compared to some of the Star Wars content that exists today.
Yeah, and I don't know if this falls into the same category, but the fact that they've like enhanced, I think it's Disney and Star Wars, but they definitely enhanced the interest in the drive to implant CG actors now, which has become a
Yeah,
thing in recent years. So
yeah, because they've done it. What did they do? They did it with a few actors who had obviously passed away. I think it was General something. He was in like Rogue One, and they used it. I remember watching that in cinema. That's where there's like CG is insane, and also
General,
AI.
General
AI has
Tarkin.
probably yeah, that's it. General Tarkin. Yeah, I remember watching that in the cinema and in Rogue One, and I was just looking at it. I was like, is that guy real? I don't know if he is or not because he looked like the amount of effort that went into that. Whatever I say, most model obviously is a 3D model. It's just insane, and it's just like how did you do that? Like, how did you create that amazing looking model of a real person?
Lots of effort and time and consent from the family, but
Yes, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's impressive. Also considering that even though you can still look at it and say, "Oh, that's on," or "That doesn't look off," or even in terms of a recent example, you can look at Luke Skywalker's appearance in The
yes.
Mandalorian, where
Isn't that a
you
deep
can tell
fake?
like that was like deep fake esque,
Yeah,
and it was you can tell at certain angles it wasn't real, of course, but
yeah,
you see a bit more
definitely.
defined version in Book of Boba Fett, and it flips and flops, but they've definitely actually got the grasp of it. I mean, so much so that their Marvel films, which have a bit more budget, I'd say, so they
I
were able to make it a bit more defined. You've got
hmm.
Michael Douglas in the Ant Man films, where he looked like they just brought him out of retirement from the not retirement. They brought him out of a cryogenic freezer from his time in the 80s.
Wait, I haven't watched Ant Man to be fair. I remember seeing some pictures about it though. Wasn't who's that? There's like this floating. I don't know. It's a cylinder. It looks like a cylinder.
Oh god.
Apparently, they literally the face on that thing looked really. I mean, from the picture I saw, it looked awful. Like, how did
Oh,
they?
he is awful. That goddamn entire movie is so disappointing.
Yeah.
We won't let this devolve into a rant about Marvel
Yeah,
and
that's
that
yeah. We're kind
movie.
of going from like
But
Disney's downfalls right now. Yeah.
sorry for interrupting, everyone. Bit of an interlude. Just wanted to acknowledge here that when we reference Marvel, we failed to mention Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was a very good movie, I'll add. And the reason we don't is because this episode was filmed before we saw that film. So I hope that clears any confusion you might have regarding this current situation with the conversation. Or maybe you don't care. Either way, hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Just so you all know, let's just say that there's a reason we all don't hold Marvel in the highest regards this during this period of
So the
time because,
story, apparently.
well, other than the fact that the story is so wasted again and at points really shit, but just the fact that you have an entire movie set in the quantum realm and this is what you gave us. It's just
Yeah, there's so
oh.
much potential with like different. Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it, so I'm kind of chatting out my ass here, maybe. But I feel like there is points in films where you watch it, you're like, yeah, it's kind of wasted. Like the story, like you could have done so many cool things, and maybe even better visual effects and stuff like that. You could have done really cool, stuff
Even
to
just
do with it.
highlighting the character of Modoc, which is the big
That
head
was it.
guy.
Yeah, that
That,
was. Yep. Yeah, then I know his name.
yeah, that character could have benefited so much from like a practical model or like a puppet, as you mentioned earlier. Not puppeteering, but where they design a full animatronic,
Yeah,
face
that
or,
could have been
or
really cool,
head.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that could have definitely benefited the character because that's something that can be done, and I think would stand out and be a bit
Especially
more
with the money that the
immersive.
Marvel have or
Immersive.
Disney have, they could literally do that. Like they can make it look real enough to not get away with using. I mean, they could get away with doing it. Although all their films, I think a lot of Disney films are studio based now. I mean, another push, which I know we're switching between Star Wars and Marvel and that, but in the end, they are using a lot of this tech because they have got the money to innovate this tech as well. I don't know if you know about Unreal Engine.
I do not know.
So Unreal Engine is a game engine made by Epic Games, and they've gotten into the point where they can create real time CG that looks like real worlds. Like, well, not really, but it looks real enough so people were like, "Is that real or not?" And what they are doing with what they did with I think it's Mandalorian and a bunch of that area of films is they have a studio which is basically just a giant like panoramic screen
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that you sure you've seen that, and that's all done in real time. So there's no pre-rendering. Well, there's pre-creating the models and stuff like that, but what it allows them to do is create scenes really quick, and it just is insane. And sorry, my brain just went blank. So having this panoramic, so having this Unreal Engine and this panoramic scene and actors on set. Say for example, the director's like, I don't like where that rock is placed. He's like, all right, let's just go to the computer, but right behind near the screen somewhere, just move that rock like a couple of millimeters to the right or left or whatever
Mhm.
into the scene, so it just looks better. And that's where, again, the pros of CG. There is quick workflow. I think recently, I'd say before when everything had to be rendered and then they had to. So there's like something called compositing where you merge all of those effects together. So we have the visual effects, the actor, like the recording and all that sort of stuff. You composite them into one, into that. That's the final outcome in a sense. And having that real time effect, and you don't even have to think about. Well, you probably will have to think about compositing at some point, but it takes steps out of it, and it just makes life easier. And that's where this new tech of Unreal Engine within films is insane. Like they use it everywhere now. They're using it for like adverts for cars and all that sort of stuff. It's just insane.
Yeah, I even heard recently that they might be giving that to Doctor Who as well. They'll be allowing them to use those
Probably,
big
yeah.
screens, as you said, for more
I mean,
unique
epic.
location filming, which again, for a narrative purpose, is definitely something that could be interesting and beneficial. At the same time, though, you also can't deny that it does fall into the trap of sort of similar with CG, where you can tell where they're not, when they're not on location, because
Yeah,
sometimes, as you said, they do it so well. You can like again just look at the early seasons of Mandalorian, where you generally feel like the lead character is walking on a desert planet,
yeah,
and they could have been filmed in like a real location.
but it
But then you
wasn't.
look at
That's
it
the
as it
weird.
goes
That's
on, and you look at other products from that who have used or implied applied that technology. You can tell that it becomes sloppy or it becomes a bit more notable to the audience, to the watchers.
yeah,
That
yeah.
yeah, you're not on a location. You're clearly just standing at a green screen essentially,
That's where the
and
problems arise. But then again, there's also like for example the prequel Star Wars series, or set. You know that the scene like they're not like you're not in a real world. Like it doesn't look real. But when it doesn't look real, um, and it has an art style to it, like a specific art style, it has this artistic thing to it. It's fine because you're expecting it to look like that, but when you're trying to look real and it's not real, that's where the problems arise, and that's why I think prequels is pretty decent because it's like it looks, it doesn't look real, but it has this art style to it where it looks like a tacky sci-fi futuristic place that's not anything that we've seen before. So yeah, that's
yeah,
that's
I think the advantage to the prequels over the sequels is that the world feels lived in and it's very eye catching. The
like
story,
Coruscant, like that
yeah,
location looks like it doesn't look real at all, but it looks cool. It's just really cool. The design of it looks really cool to me. I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of shit for liking the prequels here. I think it's just so.
honestly, mate, this day and age, it's you're like the next best thing compared to that because
Mm,
you can't beat the originals, but people appreciate the prequels now
I think it's because of the Clone Wars.
because just well, the Clone Wars definitely helped people appreciate the story, but
Mm,
I think it was the pure disaster that was the sequel trilogy. They
yeah,
really made people realize we had it good. When there
yeah,
was
yeah.
actually a vision behind
I mean, I
this
never hated
story.
the prequels, to be fair with you. But then when I watched them, I was a kid, and just seeing that just looked cool. Like, dude, I think to be fair with you, I think the best film out of all the Star Wars films, in my opinion, is Episode 3.
Yeah, I can't deny that. I mean, I
I
would
think
personally
it's
say
so good.
Empire is my favorite, but you can't deny that out of the prequel movies, Revenge of the Sith is like a lot of people. It's like it's saying that I think a lot of people like to say that we didn't need the other two movies, we just needed the third one, and
Mm,
and then that can be like debated back and forth. But I
yeah,
do agree that that film is what people wanted to see from the beginning of the prequels, and that's and just talking about the effects side of it. That again, the environments, the character locations, it's
yeah,
just it really sells that part of the galaxy.
definitely. Like, it's like loads of like, even though it doesn't look real, but then again, VFX doesn't in certain scenarios. It's like, again, as I say, artistic, just like direction. Like it doesn't look real, but it looks so good. Like, what was it? It's not really shown that much in the Revenge of the Sith, but there is a scene. I think it's when Order 66 is like sort of executed. Um, there's a scene where one of the Jedi's in a planet called Fusha. I can't remember the name. It's just a planet of plants and stuff like that, and that looks really cool. Like, I mean, they've redone it in games. I don't know if you had a Star Wars Battlefront 2, the one that came out.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, they did that map in that game, and it looks so good. I just wish we had more of that planet in like movies or TV shows or stuff like that, because it's like vegetation in CG. I think vegetation is there like for CG. Like it's the max it can go. Like they've literally been using the same tech for creating trees for the past like 10, 20 years, I feel. I think it's called like speed tree. But it's literally just I think every studio use, I mean, I know this for gaming, and I'm sorry going into gaming rather than movies, but then they do overlap a lot, to be fair with you. Um is they use speed tree, which is just like a software that just creates a tree, and it just like points, and then they go from there. And it's just like vegetation is pretty good, and which like see, and that's where like also sliding into Avatar is like that it just looks insane, like creating alien planets or vegetation that doesn't exist. It's just so cool.
Yeah, there's as much as we want to say there's a defining way to fix it or go about it. It really just depends on the situation because
Yeah.
sometimes it can benefit the narrative depending on what story you want to tell.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a again a double edged sword because at the end of the day, the thing is, we as an audience, we tend to notice something more when we are familiar with it, and the same
Yeah.
applies because look at all the Marvel films. We've been so used to that when we see they're doing not the best, or when we see where they're slipping with the world crafting, it becomes notable and it really takes us out of the experience.
Yeah.
As opposed to you watch a film from 20 years ago, or even like 150 years ago, sorry. You look watch a film from 50 to 40 years ago, they didn't have the technology, so they had to rely
Mm.
on site stuff. And it sells the story because that happened. That
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
went through that stunt and broke their leg, or that person punched that
It's
guy
like
and that he felt that impact. It sells the narrative of what story they want to tell because the situation called for it to actually happen in time.
yeah. Yeah. No. It's exactly that's good. Like especially like what was it? Western films. They're like from like the 60s, 70s onward, or between those periods where Western films were big. Like all of that. None of it's CG. And to be fair, a lot of the work that they put into those films is like it's really hard. Like because it's just like finding the right location and just even film. To be fair, recording audio for it would have been hard as well because it's just like I feel like audio equipment back then was just not as good. And you know what? You know what? I was sort of thinking. I recently watched Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Probably about like a couple of weeks ago, and it isn't. It is in a sense special effects and VFX, but you know what I find insane is you know those at the beginning of the film where they have all these like effects happening of like this is this character and it just has like it's just like they put like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like the credits for the film, but then they have it at, like the begin. A lot of old films had it at the beginning. It's like
Mhm.
insane how they did that without computer. Or they probably had some sort of computer, but not like computers today. Like they put these like effects over the top, and it's just insane how they did it. Just like I don't know. I feel like filmmaking back in the '60s and before, or even a little bit after, between to the '80s or backwards, is like how like that's why I feel like it's the topic goes back to I feel like I appreciate special effects more is because I don't know how to do it. With
Yeah.
VFX, I understand the process more, and I'm like, okay, you just did that or this. It's just like that's why I feel like the appreciation it's there 100% because it's the innovation behind it. Like there's a lot of innovation behind visual effects and a lot of research from different people around the world. Like I don't know, like we wouldn't have hair simulations and stuff today if we didn't have. Usually, I think a lot of the research comes from like universities or companies like Nvidia and all them lot. They just do a lot of like mathematical work to finding a way of getting these realistic looking things. And if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have what we had today. And it's a lot of work, so I have to appreciate it still. And special effects, I have to appreciate as well. Like, although I mean, I don't know. I mean, there probably is a lot of research going into it, especially special effects. Glass, that's a cool one. It's like who came up with the idea of using? It's like what was it they use? They use like some sort of like candy or something like that. It's like you know the
Sugar
in films
glass?
how sugar glass. That's it. Yeah. Like who thought like oh yeah that looks exactly like glass when it smashes. Like it's like chemistry as well. Like it's just like it's mad how like science and math all come into movies. Like it's just I find it and it's just magic, movie magic as they say.
Yeah, it really is all about just how far we again without trying to sound poetic or whatever.
Mm.
It really is just humanity pushing what can be possible with what resources they have at the time,
Mm.
and that's there's no denying that that's going to continue to happen for the foreseeable future,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's going to impact really it's going to impact everything with how we just do our jobs when it comes to entertainment and TV because
It
at the end of
literally
the day
it doesn't
it
even
is
just
their
affect.
job.
Sorry.
It's okay. I was just going to say it really is at the end of the day the entertainment business's job to make us believe what we're watching is what's happening, and really, again, again, it's we're sort of repeating ourselves now, but it really just it does depend on the situation because if they have the resources and the technology and the drive to make it so and so, then they have to commit to that. Alternatively, they can choose to take cheaper routes that will possibly get benefit them in the long run,
Yeah,
but in the
won't look
moment,
as good.
it makes the product not as investing.
Immersive, yeah, 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 definitely. And even so, like this research going into all of these for entertainment, it does benefit other like parts of like the economy and society. Like the research going into like I don't know hair simulation. I keep on bringing hair simulation because it's like what I kind of worked on before. Is that it can help with medical scenarios as well, and it's just like how the entertainment sector does push other sectors to be thrive as well. Like if we didn't have like that big business, like because entertainment has a lot of money compared to a lot of sectors, I'd say. Like we wouldn't have better medical. I know I'm going off topic from TV and film, but we wouldn't have like, for example, in medical they want to train people how to do I don't know threading, like doing suturing and threading for medic like scenarios, like doing operations and stuff like that. If we didn't have people researching how to make realistic looking hair or like threads, those people in the medical industry wouldn't understand how to sort of well they still would, but then it's less risk learning way of doing that. And that's where like VFX and film and all that sort of stuff has really pushed other parts of society, which I know it's very off topic from films, but it's how like films have affected like this, like everything in the world. I'd say entertainment is like the driving factor. It's like, so for example, a researcher or investor could watch a film and be like, oh wow, that VFX is impressive. How could we use this somewhere else?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's again that kind of ties back and concludes really this entire discussion with that approach to with movie making because at the end of the day, movie making is telling a story that defines and sometimes like inspires
Yeah,
people in their own lives. And
it's
again, I don't want to get we don't have to go too deep into it, but essentially, I feel like it's why it's important that filmmaking has to be done carefully and precisely with what story they want to tell and
yeah,
how they do it because sometimes again, I don't want to pinpoint an example one, but
please,
essentially, if it's poorly done or if it's done and it's clearly like there's no passion behind it, that can deter people's appreciation for it if it's an existing IP,
hmm.
or they can down their appreciation for it if it's something new, but it doesn't live up to the expectations of what they think it could be.
Yeah, yeah,
Because again, it really just comes down to forget about your difficult modern boring lives in present and put yourself in the shoes of a character flying a spaceship or punching a supervillain and the stories that they tell can inspire them. Like how many people became archaeologists after they saw Raiders of the Lost Ark? How many people became scientists after after they saw Star Wars and tried to
create
advance
spaceships.
humanity to see the
Yeah,
space?
it's just
There's
inspiration for innovation, and that's why creativity is perfect because like I feel like a lot of scientists and researchers are probably very not. I wouldn't say they're closed-minded, but like it's you have set rules, don't you, with science, maths, and all that sort of stuff. It's like, all right, this thing does that, but when you watch a film, you're like, okay, I see how art can come into inspiration of maybe this could actually work. So like, what is it like? Star Trek is a great example of like where a lot of things in the real world are trying to imitate what Star Trek has done. I feel like for example, self-opening doors and stuff. I'm sure I might be completely wrong, but I'm sure there was some sort of inspiration of Star Trek to create these doors. It's like, oh, if they could do it in this film, why can't we just do this in real life as well? And it's like taking out the boundaries of science and trying to use creativity to create this thing in real world.
mm, yeah, there's an endless way of inspiration for people out there, and filmmaking and entertainment is one of them. And there's no denying that that is in part because of things like special effects and visual effects.
Definitely, definitely. It's really interesting. It's really cool. Like how like it's just tech and movies and everything. Entertainment sector is just it's pushing forward. Everything.
And where it's going to go from there, who knows? But you can't deny it's going to be interesting to say the least. Whether it's beneficial or whether it's detriment, it's definitely going to go somewhere.
Definitely, yeah, it will. And yeah.